Hi everybody and welcome to today's Jungle Musings. Today the Jungle Musing is going to be based on the third philosophy in the jungle, silence the inner critic. And I want to talk to you about these bugs that we have in this Houston jungle. I'm from Houston, Texas, and we call Houston the cement jungle, but it is a jungle nonetheless. We have a bug that comes and visits every summer called the cicada. Some people mistake it for the locust bug, but it's actually the cicada bug. And what it does is it comes up from the ground, the roots where it lives underneath all year long, and then they crawl up the trees, they live in the treetops, and they mate. And they have a mating call. The males actually are the ones that put out the mating call. And it's likened to a cricket. In fact, some people would think that the sound is the sound of crickets, but it's not. It's not at all. The cicada bug, what it does is it starts at a really low sound where like maybe a few of the bugs start making this sound, and then all these other cicadas join in harmony, and the sound gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and it really gets loud, and then it'll go down and you can hear it it's kind of like an accordion of sound, and then it'll just go away for a period of time, and then it'll start back up with this low vibrational sound of these cicadas, and then they all join in, and again, and this is a jungle bug. It is a bug that is found in the jungles. And so I'm gonna liken the inner critic to a cicada, okay? I remember when I was a young girl growing up here in Houston, Texas, and I had this little running buddy in junior high named KK, who was from up north. Now, she'd been in Houston for a while, and she had a friend who came from the north to visit. And we were sitting out on the patio in the backyard one evening, and we were just cutting up and being silly preteen girls, and all of a sudden her friend jumped out of her chair and started screaming and jumping up and down, going, "What is that sound? What is that sound?" It scared the what out of her. And KK and I didn't hear it. It had become a background sound for us, and that's the way the cicada bug and the sound of the cicada is for many people who live in the jungle. It's a background sound. In fact, I was telling a friend of mine this story, and she's from the South as well, and she had no idea she could not distinguish what the sound was of the cicada bug, because it literally becomes a background sound. And so anyway, back to my story about KK's friend from up north. We finally figured out what it was that was scaring her so much, and we told her, calm down, it's just bugs, it's just bugs. And back then we did call them locust bugs. That's what we called them. They're not actually locust bugs, they're cicadas. But anyway, so then we proceeded to laugh really hard about what had just happened. I want to say that the inner critic is somewhat like the cicada bug. The inner critic is in the background for most people, and some people actually never, ever really get in the foreground what their inner critic is saying to them, and have no idea how much there is an internal voice that is holding them back in their lives. And then there's others who start to do some self-awareness work or go to therapy or something of the like, and they begin to distinguish this inner voice that comes up, and when it comes up, it gets really loud and takes them out of their game. And we call that the inner critic. And in the jungle we do. And what I want to say is that if you are someone who is distinguishing your inner critic, and you're really clear that the inner critic is stopping you in your life, that it's hindering you, one of the things that will first happen usually with people is they'll begin to wonder, why, what, how did that inner critic, what is that about? How do I shut that inner critic up? And that is what we're going to call resistance for the sake of this conversation. We're going to identify that as resistance, when in fact, really, with the inner critic, all you need to know is that it's different belief systems that were inputted when you were a child, and it could be from your family, it could be from your societal beliefs, systems. It can be from religious experiences, from being in religions that maybe weren't so nurturing at some level. It can come in from all kinds of different places when you're a child. But when it comes in, when you internalize criticism and then it becomes your inner critic, it is neural pathways. It becomes just neurons firing, neural pathways. And one of the best ways to silence the inner critic is not to resist it or try to figure out or analyze it, but simply to identify it and know that when the inner critic comes up, the more attention you put on it, the louder it will get. And the more you try to get it to go away, the louder it will get, because you're just resisting something that is actually harmless, just like these bugs called the cicadas. They are the most harmless bugs. So what is one of the best ways to silence the inner critic is meditation, some form of quieting the mind. Not when this inner critic is attacking, but on a day-to-day basis. Now, many people will say, I've tried to meditate, but my mind is so crazy busy that I can't do it. I gave up long ago, not going to try it again. And here's the news. The newsflash is that if you are one of these people, you are the one who needs it the most. And meditation is a practice, and there's many different forms of meditations, as I have said in some previous videos. If you do it on a regular basis, what happens is that you get a much higher viewpoint. You get an objective viewpoint. Or some people might call it a higher self viewpoint, so that when the inner critic kicks in, when the cicadas start building a crescendo of noise inside of your brain, you can actually go up and expand your higher self, expand beyond the treetops where the cicadas live, and see it for what it is, and then label it for what it is and allow it to dissipate. There are many different forms of meditation, and one of my favorites that I learned back in my 20s in reevaluation counseling, and then in every single one of my trainings had this one aspect of it that had a common thread, and that was working with your human attention, because what you put your attention on is what will expand. What you put your attention on is what will create in your life. And so working with human attention, the latest thing that I ran across was the 17-second rule. And the 17-second rule basically is that if you keep your attention on something for 17 seconds, you can darn well bet that there will be a momentum of your attention being stuck on that subject. And if it's a great subject, it's something you want to create, then go for it. Hold your attention on it for 60 seconds, and you will actually begin to gain more and more energetic, real creative powers towards what you're wanting to create. 60 seconds of attention at a time on something you want to create. But if it's something that you don't want to create, like buying into your inner critic's voice and words, then 17 seconds you want to shift your attention away from what is going on, where your attention is. And so there are many different ways to do this. Again, if you use meditation, this will make very much sense to you. You will already be familiar with how this works. And so quieting the mind, putting your mind on other things that you actually want to create deliberately in your life, and not doing it to try to avoid or stuff back the inner critic or resist the inner critic, but simply from a place of power. Again, an expanded viewpoint that comes from above the treetops. It is connected with your higher self. And so I hope that this video has contributed to you today. And if it did, please share it with your friends and like it at the bottom. And again, until next time, as usual, from In the Jungle, see you next time.